43% of men admit to not being able to achieve or sustain an erection at least some of the time. 22% said it happened more often than they'd like to admit. Even more concerning is the fact that the average man's testosterone in the 1940s was twice that of a man's today. After researching the topic, I found that in the next 10 years, we're going to have a public health crisis, and how an unlikely group that spawned out of incel culture might just hold the solution.
That's right, ladies and gents. Today, we're talking about porn.
Who the fuck are you? So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that today's society is run off taking advantage of our primitive brains in the name of consumer culture. Super stimuli like social media mimicking the feeling of gaining social status amongst your tribe, or fast food tricking your brain into thinking you just hunted an animal that needs to be eaten right now, otherwise it's going to go bad, with the perfect ratios of foods and chemicals in order to keep you wanting more. But what happens when you take Mother Nature's strongest, most inherent drive, chuck it on a bunch of steroids, and make it free and readily available for the entire public? Well, the data's in, and it's not great. But to understand the sheer scope of the problem, we're gonna have to look at everyone's favorite neurotransmitter, dopamine. Now, a common misconception about dopamine is that it's the chemical of pleasure, but really it's about the pursuit of pleasure. In fact, dopamine spikes most the moment before you take a bite of a burger rather than when you're eating it. The other thing that we need to know is that for every behavior you engage in, you're going to release less dopamine over time. So one monster isn't gonna cut it anymore, you'll need 3. One cigarette ain't gonna do, you'll need a pack. And one picture of Danny DeVito isn't going to butter your mustard anymore, you'll need to build a shrine. But in terms of how this relates to porn use, Gary Wilson, the author of Your Brain on Porn, explains it very well in this TED Talk.
In this Australian experiment, it's not mere nudity, but novelty that gets arousal skyrocketing. Subjects watched 22 porn displays. See that spike? That's where the researchers switched to porn the guys hadn't seen before. What happened? Their erections and their brains fired up.
And alongside this, here's Chris Williamson explaining how this might have some unforeseen consequences down the line.
Mary Harrington has the 3 laws of pornodynamics, and the second law of pornodynamics is the law of FAP entropy. And it says that whatever you start out wanking to will get progressively more intense over time. And I think that this is sort of speaking to that ever sort of escalating amount of the wildness that you need to watch in order to get an ever decreasing stimulus that comes back.
Also, again, now's the perfect time to subscribe. Look, it's right there. It's right there. Right up. You just do it. The thing that scares me about all this is if you look at people in their 50s and 60s and the kind of depraved stuff that they end up being into, and all they had whenever they were growing up was such like benign stuff like Playboy and magazines. So what happens when you get an entire generation of people who start off from the age of 11 seeing more people in one viewing session than our ancestors would have seen in their entire lifetime? And you might be thinking, well, okay, but that's not going to be me. Well, Dr. Andrew Huberman would tend to disagree.
There's an additional issue with pornography, which is not often discussed, which is that, remember, guys in particular, the brain is a learning prediction machine. And if I'm not trying to say that all pornography is bad, but there are good data to support the idea that if your brain learns to be aroused by watching other people have sex, it is not necessarily going to carry over to the ability to get aroused when you're one-on-one with somebody else, right? Especially young kids who are consuming a lot of pornography, the brain is learning sexual arousal to other people having sex.
So you're going to program yourself into being a voyeur.
That's right. Before you know it, you'll be sitting in a corner wearing a Superman costume, waiting for the friendly neighborhood plumber, Mr. Sins, to come around and fix your wife's pipes. In all seriousness, though, we've seen the kinds of effects that this can have. Even moderate porn use has been associated with hyperfrontality. Essentially, the part of the brain that's human gets weaker and weaker, and you get less able to delay gratification and less able to control impulses. Alongside this, people have a reduced satisfaction with everyday life, and there is a direct correlation between porn use and instances of anxiety, depression, and social ineptitude. And with all this in mind, the rise of incel culture and the red pill community kinda makes more sense. Thousands and thousands of these men have gone on forums and posted their stories about not being able to perform in the bedroom, only being able to be aroused by looking at porn, as well as their relationships with friends and family deteriorating over a long enough time frame. And for all this downside, there doesn't seem to be much benefit. But it's not all doom and gloom. In June 2011, a web developer from Pittsburgh known as Alexander Rhodes posted a long thread after he saw a Chinese study from 2003 which linked erectile dysfunction and porn use. Because of this, he decided not only to abstain from the use of porn, but also from self-satisfaction in general. And this started what was then known as the NoFap community. And next thing you know, hundreds of thousands of men start posting threads about what the results were after abstaining from porn, which perfectly line up with everything that we've been saying in the video. Increased confidence, increased life satisfaction, Hell, some of them were actually finally able to go and speak to women. Now, am I saying that to get any of these benefits, you need to completely abstain from choking the chicken, from beating your meat, from making the bald man cry? No, and even if I was, let's be honest, you wouldn't listen. But what I am saying is that it's past time that everyone looks at the relationship with the movies and see if they can strike a healthier one. Because I'm assuming Superman costumes ain't cheap.